Have you ever heard of the saint of impossible causes? The one who turned pain into hope, who made a rose bloom in the snow and caused a vine to sprout from a piece of dead wood. Today you'll discover the true story of Saint Rita of Cascia, not just the devotion, but the incredible facts and miracles that have lasted for centuries. From a humble childhood in Italy to becoming one of the most beloved saints in the world, let's dive into the most touching curiosities about her life, her faith, and her legacy. So get your heart ready, because this story will move you in ways you don't expect. And now begins another journey through the faith that moves mountains. Here are 20 fascinating facts about her. Life and legacy of Saint Rita of Cascia. 20 birth and childhood. Saint Rita of Cascia was born in 1381 in the small village of Roccaporina, near the town of Cascia in the region of Umbria, Italy. Her baptismal name was Margherita Lotti, but from an early age, everyone called her Rita. She was the only child of Antonio and Amata Lotti, a couple known for their deep faith and service to the community. Rita grew up in a home filled with prayer, humility, and peace. Her parents were already elderly when she was born, something unusual for the time and interpreted by many as a special blessing. Even as a child, Rita expressed a deep desire to consecrate her life to God, imitating the lives of the saints she heard about in stories at home and in church. It was common to see her retreating to the solitude of the mountains to pray, even at a very young age. 19. Marriage and family. Despite her early desire to live in a convent, at age 14, Rita was promised in marriage, as was customary, to Paolo Mancini, a man with a difficult temperament, involved in political rivalries and known for his violent behavior. They lived together for nearly 20 years, a time marked by silent suffering. Even in the face of verbal abuse and a turbulent home, Rita never responded with hatred. Through her unwavering faith, she managed to touch Paolo's heart, and shortly before he was murdered in an ambush, he had converted. But Rita's sorrow didn't end there. The couple's two sons, driven by a desire for revenge, vowed to kill their father's murderers. Afraid they would commit such a grave sin, Rita begged God to take them before that could happen. Soon after, both boys became ill and died, likely of the plague, but according to accounts, reconciled with God. If you love real stories of faith, miracles, and saints who left a mark on the world, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Each video is a new spiritual journey, and you are my special guest. 18. Entering the convent. Now a widow and without children, Rita felt that her true calling, religious life, could finally come true. She sought refuge in the monastery of the Augustinian sisters in Cascia. However, she was turned away multiple times because she wasn't a virgin, something that, at the time, was nearly an absolute requirement for nuns. Tradition says that one night, while praying fervently, she was miraculously transported into the convent by three saints: Saint Augustine, Saint Nicholas of Tolentino, and Saint John the Baptist. The next morning, the sisters found Rita inside the cloister, praying, and interpreted it as a clear sign that her entry was God's will. She was accepted into the convent at the age of 36. 17. The forehead wound. Stigma. One of the most extraordinary episodes in Saint Rita's life occurred in 1432 during deep prayer before the crucifix. She pleaded with all her heart to share in Christ's passion. According to accounts, at that moment, a thorn from Jesus' crown came loose and pierced her forehead, leaving a deep, open wound that emitted a foul odor. This wound remained with her for the last 15 years of her life. Because of it, she lived more secluded, avoiding contact with other sisters so as not to disturb them with the smell. Still, she never complained. She accepted the pain as part of divine grace, a seal of divine love. At one point, she was invited on a pilgrimage to Rome. Her wound healed miraculously, but reopened as soon as she returned to the convent. 16. The miracle of the vine. This miracle is one of the most symbolic and beloved among her devotees. As an act of obedience and penance, the convent superior ordered Rita to water a dry, seemingly dead stick planted in a corner of the monastery garden. The command seemed absurd, but Rita followed it every day, for years. Then something unexpected happened. The dry stick came to life, sprouted leaves, blossomed, and grew into a strong vine that still bears fruit today. Yes, the original vine still exists, growing in the garden of the monastery of Cascia, Italy, for over 500 years. It became a symbol of persevering faith, silent obedience, and hope that blooms where no one believes it can. 15. Passing away. Saint Rita of Cascia passed away on May 22, 1457, at the age of 76, in the convent where she spent most of her life. She spent her final days immersed in prayer, enduring a long and painful illness. Even weakened, she kept a serene gaze and an unshakable faith. Her final breath was surrounded by an aura of peace, and it is said that, at the moment of her death, the bells rang by themselves and a sweet fragrance filled the convent, just the beginning of many signs to come. 14. The incorrupt body. 4 centuries, the body of Saint Rita remained intact, without natural decomposition, something considered by the Catholic faith as a sign of holiness. Today, her body is displayed in a crystal reliquary at the Basilica of Saint Rita of Cascia, in the city that bears her name. Even after more than 500 years, the features of the saint are still visible, a silent testimony to something that defies logic. 13. Canonization. Rita's sainthood was officially recognized by the Church in 2 stages. First, she was beatified in 1627 by Pope Urban VIII. Later, on May 24, 1900, Pope Leo XIII canonized her, officially declaring her Saint Rita of Cascia, a model of a wife, mother, religious woman, and a person of unshakable faith. She is celebrated on May 22 with festivals, novenas, and massive pilgrimages in various countries. Leave your prayer request in the comments so that Saint Rita of Cascia may intercede before God on your behalf. 12. The miracle of the rose. In her final days, already very ill, Rita asked her cousin for a rose from the garden of her childhood home in Roccaporina, even though it was the middle of winter and everything was covered in snow. Against all odds, the cousin found a single blooming rose and brought it to Rita, who smiled upon receiving it. The event became a symbol of the saint. The rose represents the impossible becoming real through faith. To this day, many devotees report receiving roses during difficult times as a sign of Saint Rita's intercession. 11. Basilica of Saint Rita of Cascia, Italy. In the heart of the city of Cascia stands the Basilica of Saint Rita, built specifically to house her incorrupt body and to welcome the faithful from all over the world. Inaugurated in 1947, the Basilica is one of the most visited shrines in Europe, alongside Assisi and Lourdes. It impresses not only for its modern architectural style, but also for the relics on display, such as the crucifix before which Rita received the stigmata, and personal items she used while in the convent. 10. The birthplace in Roccaparina. In Roccaparina, the small village where she was born and raised, Saint Rita's childhood home has been preserved. Visitors can see the small room where she slept, the simple home of her parents, and even the tiny oratory where she prayed as a child. There you'll also find the Garden of the Rose Miracle, where the famous flower is said to have bloomed in the dead of winter. The site is now a center of pilgrimage and spirituality, perfect for those who seek a connection with the saint's origins and wish to walk where she once walked. 9. The miraculous vine. Inside the convent where she lived in Cascia, the vine that sprouted from a dry stick watered by Rita for years, as an act of obedience, is still alive. The plant became a symbol of patient and persistent faith. Its branches are carefully preserved by the nuns, and its shoots are sent to spread devotion worldwide. Some churches even grow cuttings of Saint Rita's vine. 8. Relics around the world. Beyond Cascia, various secondary relics, such as fragments of clothing, objects used by the saint, and even small bone fragments, have been distributed over the centuries to churches and convents devoted to Saint Rita. You can find her relics in Spain, France, Mexico, Argentina, and Brazil. In Brazil, Saint Rita has one of the largest groups of devotees outside of Italy. Entire towns are dedicated to her, like Santa Rita do Passa Quatro in São Paulo, Santa Rita in Paraíba, and Cascia in Minas Gerais. In many of these churches, the faithful leave letters, flowers, and prayer requests, especially for impossible causes, such as undiagnosed illnesses, family reconciliations, and freedom from addictions. 7 Roses, thorns, and healings. It's very common to hear testimonies from people who smelled the scent of roses during intense prayer, or who received roses unexpectedly in moments of despair. Many see this as a sign of Saint Rita's spiritual presence, especially when these moments coincide with the resolution of a problem previously considered impossible. Some miraculous healings attributed to her intercession were even documented by the Church during her beatification and canonization process. 6. Patron saint of suffering women. Although she is venerated by people of all backgrounds, Saint Rita holds a special place in the hearts of women. She is seen as a model wife who endured pain with dignity, a mother who fought for her children's well-being, and a religious woman who gave everything to God. Her life inspires those who suffer in silence, who carry unseen burdens, and who continue to love even when there seems to be no way out. 5. Saint of the Locked Doors. Another affectionate title given to her by devotees is the Saint of the Locked Doors, referring to the episode in which she was miraculously brought into the convent by 3 saints, despite the doors being closed. Today, this title represents her ability to intercede in situations that seem completely blocked, hopeless, or impossible. For the rose and the crucifix, her eternal symbols. Saint Rita is almost always depicted holding a rose and a crucifix. The rose refers to the miracle in the garden, where a rose bloomed in the midst of winter, symbolizing grace where there seemed to be no hope. The crucifix refers to the moment she received the stigmata on her forehead, a thorn from Christ's crown, marking her deep union with his suffering. These 2 symbols, beauty and pain, reveal the essence of her sanctity, a woman who knew how to bloom even while nailed to the cross of life. 3. Saint of impossible causes. Saint Rita is invoked when every door seems closed, when doctors say there's no hope, when reconciliation seems unreachable, or when forgiveness feels impossible. Her own spiritual path was once considered a lost cause, widowed, the mother of 2 deceased sons, and rejected 3 times by the convent. but she turned it all around with faith, perseverance, and prayer. 2. Inspiration for film, art, and literature. The story of Saint Rita has inspired films, plays, books, and sacred paintings. One of the most well-known films is the Italian Saint Rita of Cascia, 2004, which portrays her life with a touching narrative and stunning cinematography. Both Renaissance and modern artists have depicted her with tenderness and sorrow, always with her eyes turned toward heaven and a thorn in her forehead. Her image continues to inspire artists who seek to portray the most human and resilient aspects of Christian faith. 1. A model of holiness in silence and obedience. In an age of noise and self-promotion, Saint Rita stands as an example of holiness in hiddenness. She didn't found religious orders, she didn't preach in public, and she didn't perform grand, visible deeds. But she lived out radical love, obedience, and forgiveness. She is a saint because she loved until the end, even when no one was watching. Because she believed even when it seemed foolish. And that's why she remains a symbol of hope for so many today, especially for those who suffer in silence and still hold on to faith. The story of Saint Rita of Cascia reminds us that true faith doesn't depend on circumstances. It blooms even in the winter of the soul. If these facts touched your heart, leave a rose in the comments and share this video with someone who needs hope. And if you, like me, believe that the impossible is only the beginning for those with faith, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and keep walking this journey with me. See you in the next video. May Saint Rita intercede for you, always.